Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the GiantMouse Knives ACE Sonoma. First off, though, I want to thank very much my Patreon patrons. They're making the channel, possible, just overall. Without their generosity, this wouldn't still be a thing, so thank you very, very much for that, patrons. They also make it possible for me to look at a knife like this and go, yeah, I should go ahead and buy one of those, and then to buy it without even a second thought. That's a beautiful thing. Next thing, let's do a size comparison real quick. This is a knife that actually looks relatively small, visually, but isn't actually all that small. If we put this guy up next to the Ontario Rat number 2 and the Spyderco PM2, we can see, yeah, it's not a tiny little knife here. Then throw it up next to the Delica here. Yeah, it's not a biggin', but by my standards, it's definitely up there, because we can see here that the blade length on this guy is coming in right around 3.5 inches, which is a pretty substantial blade length. This has more than enough blade to get most tasks done, and that's going to be a beautiful thing for a lot of folks. Next thing, sort of the elephant in the room with this knife is the GiantMouse GM3. This is a knife that I've reviewed previously, and in my review, I basically referred to that knife as being a near miss. It's a great design, there's a lot of good to it, but it just had a couple of major issues that kept it from being something I really liked and enjoyed. This guy is, or at least this guy feels in many ways, to be a spiritual successor to the GM3. The lines are substantially similar, design is the same company, etc. But this guy has a couple of meaningful differences. To start with, the big one is this guy has a frame lock rather than being a liner lock, and frankly, this guy has a bunch of improvements. I feel like this is really a GM3, but in a lot of ways strictly better. And one of the ways that it is better is it is coming from a new and different factory. This is coming from, I believe, to be Rayot knives, and that's a beautiful thing. But generally speaking, this is just a version of the GM3, or at least this feels in many ways like a version of the GM3, which is just an improvement. So I was super excited to have it on my table. But one of the biggest sources of improvement is the fact that this is a part of their ACE line, rather than being one of the GiantMouse GM series, which are all done frustratingly as limited editions, where it's like, okay, we're going to make 300 of them and then abandon the design forever. That's one of the things that bothers me, substantially in the world, but particularly in knife making. And so the fact that this is a part of the ACE line, which is evergreen, which, although they're not, saying we're going to make them until the end of freaking time, what they're saying, they're not saying we're going to kill it arbitrarily after a certain number of units is sold. That means that you've got a pretty substantial chance of picking one of these guys up, and that's a beautiful thing. So anyways, enough with the preambles. We can go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. So on the good side, to start with, I like the design. I like the design of the GM3 a fair amount, but in a lot of ways, this is no exception. This is a relatively attractive knife. It has a lot of good going for it. It also has very nice ergonomics, which are a part of this design. Not only do you have a finger choil up here, but you also got a nice area for your hand to rest here. The clip itself works relatively well in the hand. The whole effect overall is quite nice. The design on this guy is a beautiful thing. Another thing that is beautiful about this knife is the relatively low-profile flipper tab. You can see here it has been aggressively jimped, but it is very, very easy to 100% reliably deploy the knife, but without having a massive pocket pecker hanging off the back of it, pecking on whatever's in your pocket all day. That is absolutely a great thing, and it's a part of this design that I very much appreciate. Next thing, this guy has a very nice blade to it. It is an M390 steel blade, and of course M390 is, one of the, in terms of chemistry, one of the better steels out there, and we have every reason to believe it's been done right here, given that factory, but it also has a very nice choil, which serves not only as a finger choil, but as a sharpening choil. It has a relatively thin grind, which is a beautiful thing, and, it cuts well. This is a very, very nice blade for actual daily life utility use. It even comes down to a nice thin tip. For something that is sort of looking to be a classy knife, I think this really substantially does that well, and the blade is going to be well suited to that. Next thing, this has very, very nice fit and finish overall. Looking at this knife, really, it's pretty much unimpeachable. There were a couple of design choices I may disagree with, but in terms of fit and finish and build quality, yeah, everything's on point. Everything's dead-centered. The action's great. This is exactly the kind of, damn near perfection I really hope to see from someplace like this. And especially from these sorts of smaller boutique brands, this is what I love seeing. That's an absolutely wonderful thing. But when it's combined with really good details, that's also wonderful. Not only do you get this nice jimping up here, further up on the blade, and of course, the exact positioning of it. I mean, it makes sense at some level. If you're really choked up on the blade like this, then you've got it there. But it's sort of a design thing. I think that it's common throughout the GiantMouse line. You can see some mirroring jimping back here on the back side here. The jimping is beautifully cut in such a way that it's not too sharp, but it's also still quite effective. And you've got other details on this guy too. The knife, the crown of the, or I'm sorry, the top of the blade is actually crowned. It's rounded off very slightly, which is a beautiful thing. You've got a very nice backspacer on this guy. The grind on it overall is nice, and even these little pivot collars here, just look good. Overall, this has a lot of really nice details, which makes sense because the designers of these guys, by the way, are Jens Ansu and Jesper Voxnes, as you saw inside the knife right in here. Vox Ansu. But anyways, it's great. And so you get a bunch of these really, really nice details. You also get a really nice action on the knife. Like I said, this deploys reliably 100% of the time here. Zero wrist. Yeah, absolutely 100% reliable deployment. Great detent. Perfect. It's just good in terms of that. Then finally, on the good side, the price on this guy is good to go. It's $265 for an M390 frame lock, which is substantially well done by some of the more high-profile designers out there, with a lot of great details. It's fine price. No problem at all with me. So, to me at least, all that is the good, is that the price is absolutely good to go. The action is great. The fit and finish on it is really on point, which goes well with all of the great details that have been put throughout here. It's got a nice blade, a low-profile flip-a-tab, good ergonomics, and a very nice design. To me, though, what's great about this guy is the amount of improvement that this represents, both from the GM3 and I think, generally speaking, in GiantMouse's line. I mean, not only is it coming from a factory that I think is just better suited to doing really good high-end work, but it's got there's no nail nick, which I think was sort of I don't know, I made my peace with it, I guess, in the GM3, but this feels a little bit cleaner without it. The blade also is not nearly as exposed. In the last one, you had not only the exposure at the tip here, but you also had some pretty substantial exposure here. Here you can just, take a look. It's not... Like, I can't get in there and touch that blade, but, nevertheless, that was a major issue in the original there. You have an improved action on this guy relative to the original, the lock bar access. So, given it's now no longer a liner lock, but still, it's much, much easier to unlock this guy, and it's regularly available to everybody rather than being a limited edition one-and-done thing, and to top it all off, it's $60 less than the original GM3. The fact that they were willing to make those improvements to turn the GM3 from something that was kind of frustrating in that it was a really near miss into something that is just flat out great is a wonderful thing. But the fact that they're able to do that with a better factory and for cheaper, oh yes, that's great to me. I love incremental improvement, and this is a big chunk of incremental improvement. This is a very, very nice evolution of that knife, and I don't know if they consider it to be an evolution or a different thing, but at least from where I'm standing, it's pretty damn clear that this is an evolution, and that's just an absolutely wonderful thing. So, to me at least, that's what's great here, is that this has just a bunch of different improvements, all of which adding up to a knife that is not only better, but cheaper, and just fit and finish-wise off the freaking charts. That's a beautiful thing. On the bad side, I do miss a little bit the blue accents that they had in the GM series. Hopefully they're bringing those back over to the ACE lineup here soon. Not a big deal, but it feels like that was a big part of their branding, and now it's sort of missing. So, whatever. Okay, I can live with that. Next thing, I gotta say, I'm a little bit nonplussed, so to speak, at the shallowness of the carry of this knife. You can see here that this knife, with the clip as it stands, will be hanging out of your pocket at least this much. I'm assuming everything seats properly. There is a whole bunch of knife hanging up out the top of your pocket. This is going to be great for, accessing it. In fact, this jimping on the back here makes it very easy to extract the knife, even if you're doing this kind of a pinch. But it is definitely a relatively shallow carry option, and that's going to bug a lot of people. You know what? For a knife like this, I don't know. That didn't really end up getting my goat particularly, but it's definitely something you want to keep in mind. Next thing, this is a relatively heavy knife for the overall size of it. At some level, like I said, this is a weird knife because it feels like it should be smaller than it actually is. And so, size-wise, we're coming in at 3.6 ounces here. And you know what? That's not out of line. That's not so far away from the ounce and inch thing. But at the same time, like I said, this feels like it should be a smaller knife than it actually turns out to be. And so, as a result, when you pick it up, it's like, wow, that's a little dense. cents. This isn't really a big deal at all. I don't think you should consider this to be a problem. It's just a situation. It's just something to keep in mind. It's not a super lightweight knife. There's not a lot of internal pocketing or anything like that. But again, the balance, although the balance is a little further back than maybe I'd like it to be, especially with this choil, that's not a big deal. One of the things that is a slightly bigger deal is the clip on this guy. I'm not a big fan of the clip because what you can see here is that with this clip, there are actually 2 points of contact here, and one of which doesn't generally make that much contact. But really, the entirety of the clip contact surface is just these 2 little ridges right under here and under here. Let's see if I can get that zoomed in. Yeah, that's not something I'm super in love with. I did prefer the clip from the old GiantMouse series, just because, well, there was a little bit more consistent point of contact. This is just going to attack whatever's in your pocket. Or, I'm sorry, it's going to attack your pocket itself over time. It's on a smooth surface. It's not the end of the world. But I'm not as big a fan of this skeletonized clip relative to the original GiantMouse clip, which I actually liked a whole bunch. Then finally, on the bad side, and probably my biggest issue with the knife, is this area right back here. Unfortunately, the lanyard hole mafia was, they got to the designers here. And they had, this lanyard hole was added in. And, you know, it's fine. It's well and good. But the problem is you end up with this area right here, this little set of corners that is sticking right up into your hand as you're flipping this knife. So you get this and this digging in right there. And so, as you are pressing this in, you get this little arrangement down here. Is this the end of any particular worlds? No, and actually, there's an argument to be made that it adds a little bit of extra traction for flipping, but nevertheless, I really dislike the way that they've done the lanyard here. I almost do wish that they had kept this wrapped around there. That might have been a little bit better. Not the end of the world, but it's something to consider, and definitely the biggest ergonomic sin of this guy. I really do wish that they had just been a little bit more careful here and not left those corners sharp there, or at least rounded the whole thing off, or maybe just skip the lanyard hole altogether. I don't know, but to me at least, those are the bad things here, is that you get these big hot spots off this lanyard hole area, which doesn't really need to be a thing. I'm not particularly in love with the 2-point of contact clip here. It is maybe a little heavier than you might expect. It's a relatively shallow carry, and I do miss some of the blue accents that they've had there. In terms of ugly, there's nothing ugly here, and considering how many ugly things were in the original GM3, this is a big improvement. So let's go into the final conclusion. Which is that this knife is actually 2 distinct kinds of good. I mean, at some level, as a pocket knife, it's a good tool. It's absolutely good to go. It's solid, it's got great finishing, great action, nice details, a good blade, decent price, and you know what? It's beautifully made. Sure, it's got a couple of little things to tweak. You know, this little area back here, maybe the clip and whatnot, but mostly I'm really positive about it. I think that this knife lives up to a lot of the potential that was there in the GM3 and represents a knife that I think is just strictly better. I cannot picture any universe in which I would take a GM3 over this guy. This is just an improvement. But more importantly to me, it's also a really big, its other good thing is that it's a big step forward for GiantMouse, or at least it sure feels that way to me. This was a company that was sort of synonymous with one-and-done limited editions. But here they're resurrecting a great design, or at least adapting a great design into a production model. And they're doing it for the long haul, using a brand new factory to do it while lowering the price. Oh my God, be still my beating heart. And you know, honestly, all of those things combined, iterative improvement, new factory, moving away, at least in some of these lineup, from these limited edition, you know, fear of missing out BS. This is the most excited I have ever been about GiantMouse knives, because I love seeing the iteration, I love seeing quality improvement, and I love seeing open runs, so that I can do a review of something, and if it's amazing, I can say, just go buy one. Go get one of these guys. That will be absolutely spectacular. So, although I think there are a couple of little tweaks here, I substantially like the knife. It is a much-needed follow-up to what felt like a near miss in the GM3. And I think that for many people, although this guy probably isn't going to stick around for me, and that's more a factor of my own collection than anything, I think for a bunch of people, this could easily be a gem. It's a very, very nice knife, and just on its own, and I think it's also a very, very nice... Well, I hope this is signaling a strategy change for GiantMouse, which I think if they continue down this road of iterative improvement of non-limited editions, while that could very easily turn them from being a relative mouse of a company into an eventual giant. So anyways, there you go. I hope this has been interesting to you. Really well done, GiantMouse. I love seeing this so much. You have no idea how much good this did my heart. And mostly, I hope that you all have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.